Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. So today I'm going to do the library tag, an original tag created by BookBuds. And this tag has been going around and people have been including a message from BookBuds. A new original tag from BookBuds, the library tag. Did you know BookBuds films right next to a library? We had to make this tag. Let's talk about your library habits. We have questions for both those of you that go to the library and those of you that don't. Answer the questions that apply to you. So, as a long-time denigrator of the Chicago Public Library system, but as a recent convert somewhat, I feel that I can probably answer both sets of prompts. There's one set of prompts for people who do use the library and one set for people who do not. So I think I can probably respond to both sets. I have not studied these, so my answers are going to be a little bit off the cuff and perhaps not as well thought out as they ought to be. So, begin with, if you do go to the library, answer these. And there are 10 prompts or questions. How often do you go to the library? In my case, frequency is rarely, very rarely. I go now, If I need to pick up a book, I have a couple of things on order, and one is a book about, well, let me settle down. I wish I had a drink to pull up, and let me just relax a bit. I know this makes me smaller in the shot. So years ago, 20 years ago, as a matter of fact, I did a play about the situation in Kenya, which brought Jomo Kenyatta to power. So there was the Mau Mau emergency, as it was called. And I had this was just when I started having internet access. I mean, the internet was kind of new at that point, and I had just gotten a computer with some sort of real spotty access. Somebody just jumped on somebody right behind the camera. There's a chair there, and she did not like being sat upon. And I think it must have been through online vendors that I bought some books for my research, and I found one. I thought it was an old Pelican or Penguin edition about the British pipeline, which was the concentration camp system in which people were contained and mostly killed, I think, to uphold British power in Africa. And the book was in lousy shape, and I wound up throwing it out, and I've never been able to figure out what that book was since. I've looked, and you find things that people want to forget about tend to get forgotten. And it's very hard to find information about that book, about that period, or it has been, let me say. And I've wanted to replace that copy with a nice new copy, which I assume I could find. Well, I just heard recently in online, somebody was talking about that there is a book within the last 10 years or so that covers that period. So I want to see that book. I don't want to buy it as yet, but I do want to see it. And so I have ordered it from the library, and it is en route. And so since I have that coming, I also ordered the most recent book by Ned Blackhawk, which I just finished reading today, the Undiscovery of the United States, or the Undiscovery of America, I believe is the title. It's a very confusing title. But because I have the one thing coming, I have the other one coming, and hopefully they will arrive at the same time, and then I will take the trip and collect them, and then I will take another trip to return them when their time is due. But other than that, I would not go. Mostly I use the library for ebooks and that kind of thing now. And I think this may be coming up. Yeah, it's coming up. So prompt number 2, do you belong to more than one library system? No, I do not. At one time I did. Of course, when I went to school, I had the school library system, and my school, sometime after, had a program where graduates could maintain their membership to the library system, and I went through the vetting process and got that. But then over time, the program was replaced or something like that, so it became inaccessible to me. So at this point, only Chicago, and there was a time when Chicago's card was usable in the Evanston system. I was working up in Evanston a lot before that happened. And then when it became possible, I would use the Chicago card there a little bit. But I think that program also ended or changed somehow so that I no longer have that access. I have more to say on the negative side, I think, but let's do the positive stuff. What percent of books that you read come from the library? Well, considering that I read, well, last year I think I read about 50 books maybe. And I think maybe, well, times 2 would be maybe 1%, let's say, because I think 2 of the books that I read came from the library. Ebook, though. Number 4, do you listen to audiobooks or get ebooks from the library? Or are you hooked on Audible or Amazon or something else? I have only gradually gotten into ebooks from the library. It's a relatively convenient way to get a title without worrying so much about the time frame. If you order a physical book, you have no idea when it's going to come. It'll probably take a month, possibly less than that. There's a good chance they won't even have the book. It's been stolen, but they don't report that kind of thing. They don't update the system to indicate that the book has been stolen. So like in the case of the Ned Blackhawk book, a viewer mentioned it in the comments section of a video I posted last year sometime, and I looked for it at the library. It was too expensive to buy, and they had an ebook, so I just put myself on the waiting list. It's a very popular book, and there were at least 50 or so people ahead of me, and so I didn't worry about it. And then the book came, and I wasn't ready for it at that time, and somehow I let the hold lapse. So I just put myself back on the queue, and again it showed up, and this time I made use of it. And recently somebody on BookTube, and I can't remember who, was talking about listening to audiobooks at the same time as reading the book, the text. And I've never tried that before, and I started to do that with this. I was not focusing very well on the ebook, and I noticed that the library also had an audiobook, and that was available for immediate download, so through Libby. So I did that, and that was how I was able to read the book. I put it at 1.25 speed, and that really helped my focus. I can understand people who eliminate sub-vocalizing from their reading, how it is possible to multiply your speed enormously without the requisite sound to each word. My troubles with reading speed lies before that, with the focusing itself. And so I found that having the audible version or the audio version to listen to while I read helped me to focus on the text. I would not want to go with merely an audio version. I've done that in the past for novels and such when my eyes were burned out. But for nonfiction, I would want to have the text at hand, because in the Blackhawk book there are copious footnotes, and you want to be able to click on the footnotes and see what his source is or what the further story is. So I did that with the Black Hawk book, and it's worked out tremendously. And so in the future, I have to figure out how to determine other books that I can get simultaneously via ebook and audiobook from the library. Number 5, did you go to story time at the library as a kid? No, as with several other booktubers that I've seen do this tag, such a thing did not exist when I was a kid. Number 7, have you gotten fined for returning books late? If so, how do you feel about that? Yes, I have. I believe Chicago has eliminated fines recently, but back in the day it happened, and it would kind of burn me up a little bit sometimes. It was really annoying. It was mostly annoying because you could not check anything out thereafter. And sometimes I needed to, and for one reason or other, I wasn't able to pay the fine. I mean, somebody talked about how, well, libraries are not always, we're not always in a position to accept your money. So situations such as that cropped up, but it did not happen often. And now Chicago does not. And in fact, if you check out a book and your due date comes, if nobody else has requested it, they simply renew your holding. So you can hold on to a book for a whole year or more without having to worry about incurring a fine. There is a negative side to that as well. Have you ever borrowed a movie or a video game from your library? Video game, no. That's not my thing. Movies, yes. Years ago, maybe 10 years ago, a friend of mine had a portable DVD player, which he loaned to me. I didn't have one. And so I made use of that couple of week window that he allotted for me and was checking out movies left and right from the library. So that was very fun. But since I've made reading my primary hobby, which has been 2.5 years now, more or less, I don't watch anything at all, hardly, movies or TV. Number 7, oh yeah, I did that one. Have you gotten fined? Oh, did I get these in the wrong order? I don't know. Number 8, do you attend special events, groups, or book sales at the library? No, not as a rule. One time I happened to be at the library at a time when they had a book sale going on, and better than that, it was the last day of the book sale and the last couple of hours. It was just chance, and they said you can anything you fill into a bag that we will give you can purchase for $5, and it was a great haul. But that was just an accident. I'm sure if I kept an eye out for that stuff, I could avail myself of such opportunities more often, but I don't. Back in the old days when I was a book publisher and a practicing poet, I would give readings occasionally at libraries, and our library would host an event called Poetry Fest every year where vendors would come together to sell their wares, and different poets from out of state would come in and give readings, and there would be workshops and all of that. And I would participate in that event every year. And because I was so familiar with the library in those days, I would also go for other events and whatnot. But that familiarity has largely waned. Number 9, have you ever given or taken a book from a little free library, a book box or a book swap? Well, the little free libraries, we have a lot of those in the neighborhood. I have both given and taken books from those. The ones around my house are really pretty shabby, and so I prefer not to put things in them nowadays because they run great risk of being damaged. Inevitably there's some kind of window pane on them, and those get broken, and even the doors get broken off, and or partly broken off. So I don't give books to them much anymore. And if I take a book from one and I decide to give it back, I give it back to a charity bookshop instead. Bonus, does your librarian know you by name? Well, we have a branch library in my neighborhood. And some years ago, the library was torn down and a new library built in its place. And during that period, the library worked out of a bookmobile, I guess you would say, a bus, which had some books. And for some reason, at that juncture, both my partner and I were very active checking out books from the library, ordering things, checking them out. And there were 2 librarians only that manned the book bus at that time. And we were in so frequently, we all got to know each other. So, and if I went in, they would ask, how is your wife doing? And if my partner went in, they would ask, how is your husband doing? So they did not know the details of the relationship between us or anything like that. But they knew our names. In recent years, because we have both completely stopped going to the libraries, there may once in a while be a sign of recognition, but the names have been forgotten. So if you don't go to the library, answer these. The Chicago Public Library's original charter posited that it was to be the equivalent of the best research library available. And when I was young in the city, it was a very good library. I thought, just so I can show you a book, look at this wonderful Bhagavad Gita, which I've shown you, published by the Ramakrishna Vivekananda Center. This is actually a book that I first saw browsing at the Chicago Public Library, back when it was at the Cultural Center downtown. They moved out of the Cultural Center and got a big, sort of grotesque looking building. I like the way it looks from the outside, but it's really quite gaudy. They needed more space. But when that move happened, the library became much less user-friendly. And I was going to say the other thing which impacts that is, well, there's so many books that have been stolen from the library that are not on shelves that you think will be there. It makes it useless to go look for something at your branch library. And with people having these perpetual checkouts of their books, the shelves have huge gaps all over the place. So you can't just go to the shelves and browse like you might have done in years past. So the library has really lost that function. Have you ever had, where do you get your books from? Mostly I get them from online. It's just easier. As I say, when you check out or try to check out from the library, you usually get burned. If there's a time consideration, like I'm doing research for a project, I will have the book a lot faster from a used vendor than I will through the library system. And if the book has left the library system permanently, they will not inform you of that fact. So you may believe that the book is in transit for several months and it just never arrives. So I have found that if you need something, it's best just to buy it if you can. You can just get rid of it afterwards, or if you spent a lot, I suppose you could sell it, but I don't do that anymore. Also, certain types of books. For some reason, I think it was on one of the African projects I was doing, but also I was trying to do a Black Panther project, and books related to those subjects The library has two regional branches. We have the Sulzer branch on the north side and the Woodson branch on the south side. And books that fell under those categories inevitably wound up being housed at the Woodson Regional Library on the south side and were not for being checked out. They had to be used in library. So I never did that. Some would be housed also at the Harold Washington Library, the main library downtown. And in the old days, I might have done that, but I am downtown so scarcely now. When I was working downtown, it would be a different matter. And if were I to work downtown in the Loop again, I would be in there a lot more frequently. When was the last time you stepped foot in the library? It's been a while. As I say, I have two things coming, which I hope show up within the week or so, and then I will set foot in there again. Well, this is another, have you ever gone to an event at your library? This is for people who do not use the library. And so more about the free library and book boxes. And ultimately, the last tag for both of them is to tag friends. I don't think I really wrung out my disgust at the Chicago library system, but I want to say that as I have become a booktuber and become influenced by other booktubers, my tastes have become, in some respects, much more mainstream than they ever were. In the past, what I wanted the library for was for research purposes. And for research purposes, the library is pretty junky. You know, what was it? I wanted something by Northrop Frye, and I think it's his famous one, whatever that one is. Maybe it's about Blake. I can't remember anymore. And I wanted a more recent edition. But they had the edition that was published back in, I don't know, 1930 or whatever. And the book became famous, had newer introductions and stuff added onto it. And I was hoping to get to see something like that. But because they had this original 1930 edition or something in the system, of course, they would never consider buying another copy of it. So for research purposes, it's junk. And I don't anymore blame them because for some new research books, you know, something published that's, well, I don't have a good one to show you. Just something published that's about that, half that thickness. Brand new, it's like $200 to buy. And I don't blame the library for not buying those things. And I think they've cut out an awful lot of their periodicals as well. But I believe in those cases, there's the workaround where you can check out digital versions of a lot of the mainstream periodicals and other publications. So for that, no. But now that I do more mainstream reading, anything that's popular, so were Madonna to write a new autobiography, I would get that from the library for sure. And so in the case even of Ned Blackhawk, he is popular and mainstream enough that they are going to have his books. And so utilizing the library has worked out for me very well. There is a lot, though, if it's more scholarly and more academic in flavor. He's writing for a general audience. If it's more academic in flavor, Chicago Public Library will, chances are, not get it. And as I say, for the most part, I don't even check. But as I find myself having more and more success with books such as the Ned Blackhawk, I will be utilizing their digital and downloadable audio formats a lot more. So I am not going to tag anybody. I believe that just about everybody I follow has done this tag, but if you have not done this tag and it sounds of interest to you, please consider yourself tagged. As I say, I did not really wring out all of my disgust with Chicago's Public Library, but I think that's because I'm starting to like it a little bit better now. So perhaps if we do this tag again in 5 years, I will have moved even more over to the like side of the spectrum. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.